I said we would use certified Angus beef as kind of the model, and this is their USDA Schedule G1. And if you look there, there's the specifications for certification of beef carcass quality and yield characteristics of officially graded beef for certified Angus beef. It says they have a marbling score of minimum, modest, or higher. It has all the things that we just talked about on the last slide, or a couple of slides ago, just defined a little differently there so you can see. So all this would happen after they had identified themselves, or that they'd been identified as Angus. CAB has Schedule G1 because they were the initial program that started this program, this set of programs, in 1978. So it says original 1979 on the slide. It was actually applied for in 1978 and has been around since then. So they were the very first one. They didn't grow very quickly for a long time, but are now the majority of product that is sold under a certified program. Well, if you look at select the 3 marbling scores for choice, and then the slightly abundant amount of marbling for low prime, what we're really doing when you think about certified Angus beef is we're kind of knocking out about 2/3 of the cattle that grade choice, low choice, and all the ones that are select, and we're identifying those that are either modest or moderate in the amount of marbling, which is only the top third of the choice grade. What CAB said was, if we can do that, we're identifying those cattle that are creaming the crop of the choice grade to be in this program, and so that's what they did. And truly, CAB did not do this to try to sell meat. They don't really own any of the meat. They own the brand. But what their real goal was to provide an avenue for Angus breeders to sell more Angus bulls. And it has worked very effectively. If you look at all the Angus-based programs, though, that are out there, because there are a number of those that are out on the market that say, okay, these cattle were identified, but maybe they don't meet those specifications that are the upper 2/3 for choice for marbling. And there are other ones out there. There's Angus Prime programs. There's Angus upper 2/3 choice or higher, but the biggest one out there, the most programs, when you look at Angus programs, are the Angus Select programs. So there's a number of those as well. Angus Choice is there as well, which are low choice. Angus Prime, we finally get to the number that are top choice, or Angus upper 2/3 or higher. There are Angus programs that are for standards. There are Angus programs that are other. And if you think about what would those others be, when's the last time you've gone and bought an Angus burger or roast beef or anything like that and expect it to come from the same cattle that we're actually pulling those real high quality steaks from? They're just not there. What we're really doing is using some of the black cows, some of the spent cattle from the herd, to identify those that are down on the lower end. And so it actually works as a good marketing tool to utilize that beef and maybe help somebody understand a premium or pay a premium for some of those, even though this really started with that upper 2/3 choice or higher program. So as we really look at that, how does that work? Well, what really happens is all those cattle are identified for certified Angus, or as Angus, and then the acceptance rate on certified Angus beef is somewhere in the neighborhood of about 25%, which is way up from where it was just a few years ago when it was just 17 or 18%. So it actually works that they have a higher acceptance rate than ever before because there's a lot of people targeting these quality grades to get there. Certified Angus beef has certainly had a lot of success in the market. In 2013, they sold 865 million pounds of product under the CAB logo. Last year, or in 2014, it actually moved to 882 million pounds. So we're starting to get more and more product, and people wanting to see that is the way it works. So if you look at a carcass there and you say, well, what all goes on that? Well, the first one that's always attached is that it has to be U.S. inspected and passed to be available for anything else. If it is, we may put that Angus stamp there or up on the hock. We'll go from there to putting on the things that USDA always does as far as in terms of quality grade if the plant wants them quality graded. And so they'll put the quality grade on the carcass and a yield grade if that's appropriate as well. If they meet the right criterion for the program they're dealing with, like certified Angus beef, then that CAB or then the G1 stamp would be applied to that carcass as well. So you'd have that whole list of things that could be stamped on the carcass to help identify what those are. Okay? So I said there are other programs out there, the Hereford-based programs. There's a couple of those out there. Certified Hereford beef is the main one. There's one that Omaha Hereford beef has. Reedsville Farms has one. There's a few programs out there. They deal with a lot of choice and or select and low choice cattle that have been used a lot for some retail markets and some restaurant trade as well. Said that there are some that are Akaushi based or Wagyu based. And if you notice in this slide, the ribeye at the top is one that is kind of more traditional for these kind of cattle, high marbling cattle. You look at the one below, that's our kind of typical prime carcass. So you can see how much more marbling is actually there. And so this is a very specialty product, but some of that's certified Wagyu beef. On the Akaushi side, most of that's being marketed under something called Heart brand. And so each of those have their own specification programs as they go through. There are some Texas Longhorn programs. I'm not going to mention a whole lot about them other than I think it's kind of interesting that they are raised in the Appalachian foothills of southeastern Ohio, but they're a Texas Longhorn program. So we'll just kind of leave that as that. There's a number of non-breed specific programs, and those are mainly, again, some of the Packer programs. Some of the large ones there are Tyson's Chairman's Reserve. Cargill has their Sterling Silver program. All the major Packers have one of these. Cisco has some. Different ones like that, dealing mainly with average choice or higher cattle. There's a few other ones out there, but not very many. We go to name brand programs. One of those, or the only one that's really out there right now, is Nolan Ryan Tender Age Beef, and they have a lot of requirements. They said, you know, there's a lot of these cattle that actually they are discounted because they have too big a hump or whatever. And Nolan had those kind of cattle on his ranch, and he said, you know, if there's a way we can identify those that really eat good, then maybe we could define a program. And so they do, and they start with what they're fed in the pens. They actually go through a process as they go through the plant called electrical stimulation. So we enhance the tenderness values of those cattle by doing some things there with electricity as they go through, and not that they're the only ones that are identified that way, but that's a requirement for this program. They have a camera system that actually allows them to look at different colors that helps them identify those that are more tender. And then they actually go through a process where they are aged, the products age for a number of days before it goes to the plant. They have a little different requirements for yield grade, smaller ribeyes, some things like that that make that a very definitive program that's a little different, but has really worked. So if we think about it, not all these certified not everything qualifies for a certified program. It's really about 25% of the market right now, and even maybe a little higher today. But it is something that has been in demand. At the same time, we have identified the fact that not all of these certified programs survive. It's really hard to get a major packer to incorporate one of these programs into his or her mix of product as they go through the plant. Why? Because every time they identify another product, they've got to have a whole different distribution system for that product. They've got to have more cooler space. They have to identify different times that they can run those through their packing plant. in terms of fabrication, different boxes, different areas, more SKUs, all those kind of things. And so they have a hard time getting started, and in fact a lot of them don't survive because of those things.